Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification. I think we need to respect the right to self-identify. We don't think that self-identification is the right way forward.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
Is it right or is it wrong for Rosie Duffield to say only women have a cervix?
Well, look, biologically, she of course is right.
She's right.
What we've just witnessed is Keir Starmer performing political backflips on transgender issues, leaving many questioning his so-called open-mindedness. Is he genuinely willing to learn from his mistakes? Or is there more lurking beneath the surface?
It's also quite alarming just for any man to get into his 60s and discover that men have penises and women don't. It makes you wonder what he's done with his life.
His shifting stance has drawn sharp criticism, and Douglas Murray is ready to weigh in, shocking reporters with his bold and unfiltered statements. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.
It's extraordinary, Douglas, that a man who is in his 60s now has such a fluid value system. 1 minute something is harmful and transphobic, next minute he's happy to scream it from the rooftops.
Yes, I mean, it's also quite alarming just for any man to get into his 60s and discover that men have penises and women don't. It makes you wonder what he's done with his life. But no, of course, this is all just this. I mean, it's so pathetic watching him wriggle like that. He failed to stand up for his very brave female MP, Rosie Duffield, when she simply stated biological fact. He spent a long time doing exactly what we saw him do in one of those interviews, which is, well, it might be true, but we shouldn't say it, as if facts are sort of offensive, and always this dance. It reminds me of the sort of the religious wars of the 14 and 1500s, when people were sort of forced to say things or forced to denounce things, even if they believed them. And it's like that. Why doesn't this man, if he wants to be a leader, why doesn't he just have the courage to say what everyone knows is true and say, of course, it doesn't mean we need to be unpleasant or mean or anything like that to anyone who believes that they're born in the wrong body. But that doesn't mean that facts aren't facts. It's perfectly straightforward. And it's very telling about him, because, as I've written before, the problem with it isn't this issue itself only. It's that anyone who's going to be blown by a cultural wind that way, which wasn't the case merely 7 or 8 years ago, the next cultural wind will blow them again and again and again. And who knows which winds will blow in the next 5 or 10 years whilst Keir Starmer is Prime Minister.
Douglas makes a sharp observation, highlighting how politicians often prioritize the advice of their campaign strategists over their own convictions. Rather than standing up for what they truly believe in, they focus on playing both sides in an attempt to maximize support. It's not about principles. It's about polling numbers and appeasing as many people as possible. Instead of demonstrating real courage and integrity, they opt for political maneuvering, showing just how far they're willing to bend to maintain their position.
I want you to have a look at this tweet from someone who's going to be a Labor frontbencher, probably, Jess Phillips, mocking a guy for wearing the St. George flag as a cape. Of course, England were playing, the football team was playing, so that's what that guy was doing, supporting the team. I don't think, Douglas, you would ever do that, mock someone for having a Palestinian flag draped around their neck. But if it's a British symbol, then they feel emboldened to shame someone on social media.
Oh yeah, I mean this is. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Rita, that they listen to focus groups. Would that the politicians did listen to focus groups? They don't. They listen to a few deranged harridans on their own side most of the time, screaming banshees from the culture wars online. The real public, the normal public, want to have nothing to do with that nonsense. You know, and the normal public believe, quite rightly, in Britain like elsewhere, that, you know, if your national team is playing, you know, that's the team you support, and your national flag, you know, might be a flag you're able to fly and even be proud of. But as you say, Rita, we live in a strange era in the West where you can be proud of everything apart from what is yours. Any other flag, Jess Phillips, who's another example of us just sort of swayed by the wind. Every gust that blows takes Jess Phillips with it. She likes to present herself as this, working class, straight talking woman. She isn't. She's an absolutely typical automaton of the era who says whatever she thinks she has to say to get avoiding the banshees that are howling. And yes, I mean, there's this sort of snobbery about this, and there's nothing wrong with being proud of your national flag. But as you know, it's only in the West that we beat ourselves up like this and tolerate politicians who scorn the public for being proud of their country.
The advisors these politicians listen to merely reflect the public's sentiments. If these advisors successfully help them win elections by catering to the most extreme and outlandish desires of the voters, it underscores a significant shift in public attitudes. It raises important questions about what the electorate values and what standards they expect from their leaders. While politicians certainly have a responsibility to lead with integrity and conviction, it's crucial to recognize that they often bend to the prevailing winds of public opinion to secure their positions. The blame cannot rest solely on the shoulders of these figureheads. The real responsibility lies with the electorate who put them in power, often rewarding behavior that prioritizes short-term gains over principled leadership.
And there is no law of war that says you're allowed to start a war and then complain when you lose it. And if Mehdi cares about the Palestinian casualties, as I'm sure he does, then tell your bosses in Qatar to tell their friends in Gaza to stop the war and give back the hostages.
Douglas, tell me why you believe anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
I say it's obvious that in all of history, anti-Semitism has been a shape-shifting virus. Sometimes people hated the Jews for their race. Sometimes they hated them for their religion. In this era, the only permissible way to hate the Jews is to hate them for having a state. And as I mentioned in the debate, this absolute obsession with the single Jewish state in the world, this way in which people who never turned out on the streets when Bashar al-Assad was killing 6 times the number of people who've died in every war involving Israel since 1948, when the Arab armies advanced. If you didn't come out on the streets when Bashar al-Assad killed 6 times that number of people in a decade, but you did turn out to attack Israel after October the 7th, you're an anti-Semite. And there are many, many other examples of this. I gave examples in Canada, in the city I was in, Toronto, synagogues firebombed, Jewish schools shot at, a Muslim mob going through a Jewish area screaming about these Zionist rats and pigs. And this is just anti-Semitism. And it's the only form of it. And as I said, this doesn't mean that everyone who is anti-Zionist knows they're an anti-Semite. Plenty of them are just incredibly ignorant and drinking from wells they don't understand.
Anti-Zionism is anti-anti-Semitism oversimplifies 2 complex concepts. Anti-Zionism refers to opposition to Zionism, a political movement supporting the establishment and maintenance of the State of Israel, and is not inherently anti-Semitic. Many who oppose Zionism do so for political or ideological reasons without expressing hostility toward Jewish people. However, there are instances where anti-Zionist rhetoric overlaps with anti-Semitic sentiments, particularly when criticism of Israel or Zionism generalizes to all Jews. Similarly, equating all Zionism with anti-Semitism can be problematic, as it dismisses valid critiques of Israeli policies or the political aspects of Zionism. The relationship between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is nuanced, and care is needed to distinguish between political opposition to Zionism and discriminatory attitudes toward Jews.
I think it's absolutely despicable that people pass themselves off as caring about the Palestinian peoples. And there are all of these people working at Al Jazeera who are actually involved not just in killing Jews, but in causing the war that has led to the suffering of Palestinians. It's absolute hypocrisy, and I'm very glad that the audience in Toronto realized that.
It's astounding that, After all this time, our leaders still haven't addressed these crucial questions. But that's the nature of a system where those in power thrive on manipulating emotions and twisting the truth to fit their narrative. They're not focused on real solutions. They're masters of distraction, playing on fears and desires to maintain control. Until more people start waking up and seeing these tactics for what they are, we're doomed to watch history repeat itself again and again. The cycle continues because as long as the public stays caught in the emotional whirlwind, real accountability is out of reach. Only when people start spotting these patterns and demanding better can we hope to break free from this endless loop of manipulation and empty promises.
And I have to take you back to Keir Starmer here because his response to the rise of anti-Semitism seems to be to speak more about the dangers of Islamophobia. Here he is with London Mayor Sadiq Khan doing just that.
One of the things that is coming up over and over again is Islamophobia. And, well, you can see the stats, you can see the numbers rising, particularly since October the 7th. Although we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that before October the 7th, this was all heading in the right direction. It's been far too high for far too long. Clearly, we need to just say over and over again, Islamophobia is intolerable. It can never, ever be justified. And we have to continue with a zero tolerance approach. And I think there's more we can do in government. There's certainly stuff online, which I think needs tackling much more robustly than it is at the moment.
There you go, Douglas. We can look forward to more online censorship and campaigns to silence criticism that is deemed Islamophobic under Labor.
Yeah, I would just like to put to Keir Starmer what he would do about something like that attack I just referred to in Toronto last week. If a Muslim mob shouting Allahu Akbar and shouting about the dirty pigs and rats in the Jewish neighborhood, if anyone criticizes that, is it Islamophobic or not? Is it possible to call out Islamic anti-Semitism? Or would it be Islamophobic? He and the other people pushing this have to be able to answer that question. Is it Islamophobic to notice that the marches that have defiled the centre of London week after week since October are predominantly, very largely Muslim, and that many of the Muslims on those marches are saying intolerably racist things? Is it Islamophobic to point that out? They're going to have to work this out. Because if they don't, it's just going to be a huge and colossal circular firing squad for the coming years, metaphorically speaking for now. And the lack of thought that people like Starmer have put into this, the pandering to communities, is, I think, a recipe for absolute disaster. You can stand up for the rights of all of your citizens to be able to live in peace. But that means standing up to hatred, wherever it comes from, of the most extreme kinds. And Keir Starmer would find it easy, I'm sure, like all of us, to stand up to any actual far-right extremism. Can he stand up to the Islamic extremists? We'll see.
Islamophobia in Britain has become an increasingly pressing issue over the past few decades. Discrimination, hate crimes, and negative portrayals in media and political discourse lead to social isolation and mental health challenges for many Muslims. Recent studies indicate a spike in Islamophobic incidents, especially in the wake of geopolitical events, highlighting the urgent need for action. While various organizations and advocacy groups strive to raise awareness and support victims, and the UK government has implemented measures to combat hate crimes, critics argue that more comprehensive efforts are needed to address the root causes of Islamophobia.
Now, before you go, overnight we saw the climate cultists of Just Stop Oil attack Stonehenge. Their demented demands include Britain's next government committing legally to phasing out fossil fuels by 2030. Let's have a quick look. We can see there bystanders, women getting involved trying to stop that attack. So what sort of punishment is appropriate when political activists attack and vandalise a prehistoric monument?
You know, Rita, this has been an escalation. I write about this in my Spectator column this week. There's been an escalation of this for some time now. All of these eco-loons thought that it was okay to throw soup at a masterpiece by Van Gogh. Earlier this year, a horrible young woman slashed and sprayed graffiti over a portrait by the great Hungarian Jewish painter Philip de Laszlo. And there's been no punishment of her because she said she did it for Palestine. Yeah, right. And now we see these eco-loons attacking one of Britain's most important archaeological sites. It really tells you everything you need to know about a movement when, in order to save the planet, as they pretend they want to do, they destroy the planet. I don't believe these people are driven by anything other than narcissism, boredom, extremism, and a couple of other such things. They are vicious narcissists, and they're desperately seeking for some kind of cause, and they are trashing our history, and they're trashing our holy places and our places of learning and culture, and they're getting away with it. And as far as I believe, I think they should all be thrown in prison for as long as they can be. And any of these other people who want to try these tricks should go to prison following them.
Douglas Murray's criticism of individuals who destroy historical assets in the name of Palestine sheds light on a multifaceted and often contentious issue. He argues that, while the fight for Palestinian rights is undeniably important, it should not come at the expense of erasing history that holds significance for various cultures and communities. This perspective invites a deeper exploration of the delicate balance between political activism and the preservation of cultural heritage. It raises compelling questions about how we can advocate for justice without compromising the rich tapestry of history that informs our shared human experience. In a conflict as complex as the Israeli-Palestinian situation, fostering dialogue and mutual understanding is essential, ensuring that the quest for rights does not lead to further division and loss. The intricate web of political maneuvering, societal pressures, and historical narratives shapes the landscape in which we find ourselves. From the political gymnastics of leaders like Keir Starmer to the rising tide of Islamophobia in Britain, it's clear that we are at a pivotal moment. Douglas Murray's insights challenge us to think critically about our expectations of leaders and the values we uphold as a society. Moreover, the debate surrounding anti-Zionism and the preservation of cultural heritage in the Palestinian struggle underscores the need for a nuanced understanding of complex issues. We must advocate for justice while recognizing the importance of history and dialogue. As we move forward, let's strive for a political climate that prioritizes integrity, fosters genuine discussion, and encourages accountability. Only by engaging thoughtfully with these topics can we hope to break the cycles of manipulation and division that have plagued our society. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.